I stared at my phone in disbelief as my father's text lit up the screen. Family dinner at 7 tonight. Important discussion. 3 years. 3 years since my entire family chose to skip my wedding because I married Sarah, a black woman they couldn't accept. Now my hotel chain just made national headlines for reaching $150 million in value, and suddenly Dad wants to talk. I looked at my wedding ring, remembering that empty church where only Sarah's family sat. Tonight, I would walk into their house with something they never expected. The morning of my wedding started with a phone call that shattered my world. I was adjusting my tie in the hotel mirror, nervous excitement bubbling in my chest when my phone rang. My father's voice came through cold and distant. "Larry, I'm afraid your mother and I won't be able to make it today. Patricia came down with something terrible overnight. Food poisoning, we think." My hands froze on the silk fabric. "Dad, it's my wedding day. Can't you just take some medicine and come anyway? Son, she's been vomiting all night. We can't risk getting everyone sick." The line went dead. I stood there in my black tuxedo staring at my reflection, trying to process what had just happened. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time it was my sister, Amanda. "Larry, I am so sorry, but I can't make it. My car broke down on the highway and the tow truck says it'll be hours. There's no way I can get there in time." "Amanda, rent a car, take a cab. This is my wedding. I'm in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing here. I'm devastated, but there's literally nothing I can do." Another hang-up. My chest started tightening as I paced the small hotel room. The third call came from my brother Jake, claiming his daughter had suddenly spiked a fever and needed emergency medical attention. Each excuse felt more hollow than the last, but I couldn't prove they were lying. By the time I arrived at Sacred Heart Church, my stomach was churning with a mixture of rage and heartbreak. The sanctuary looked beautiful. Sarah's family had transformed the space with white roses and golden ribbons, just like we'd planned. But as I walked down the aisle to take my position, the devastating reality hit me like a physical blow. The left side of the church reserved for my family and friends was completely empty, except for one person. My grandmother Rose sat alone in the front pew, her silver hair perfectly styled, wearing a navy blue dress I'd seen her wear to funerals. She gave me a sad smile and a small wave, but her presence only emphasized the absence of everyone else. The right side overflowed with Sarah's relatives. Her parents, siblings, cousins, college friends, and co-workers filled every seat. They were laughing, taking pictures, and radiating the joy that should have been shared by both our families. The contrast was humiliating and heartbreaking. When Sarah appeared at the back of the church, she took my breath away. Her dress was simple and elegant, her dark skin glowing against the white fabric. But when she saw the empty left side of the church, I watched her face fall. She recovered quickly, lifting her chin with the strength that made me fall in love with her, but I knew this moment would haunt both of us forever. During the ceremony, I kept glancing at the empty pews, wondering what our guests were thinking. Sarah's uncle walked her down the aisle since her father had passed away years earlier. When the minister asked if anyone objected, the silence from my side felt deafening. We exchanged vows with tears in our eyes, but they weren't entirely tears of joy. Sarah's voice trembled as she promised to love me through whatever challenges came our way. I knew she was thinking about the challenges we were already facing. The reception at the community center felt equally lopsided. Sarah's family filled the dance floor, celebrating with infectious energy, while my grandmother sat at a table by herself, politely, applauding but clearly uncomfortable. I spent most of the evening apologizing to Sarah's relatives for my family's absence, making up elaborate stories about sudden illnesses and emergencies. Around 10 o'clock, while Sarah was dancing with her cousins, I stepped outside for some air. That's when I saw a man in a dark suit walking toward me across the parking lot. I recognized him immediately as my family's lawyer, Thomas Harrison. Larry, I'm sorry to interrupt your celebration, but I have something that requires immediate attention. He handed me a thick manila envelope with my name written in my father's handwriting. My fingers shook as I opened it. Inside was a formal letter on my father's business letterhead, dated the day before my wedding. The words burned into my memory as I read. Due to your decision to proceed with a marriage that goes against our family's values and expectations, we have made the difficult choice to remove you from all family financial arrangements. Effective immediately, your trust fund access has been revoked, your position in the company has been terminated, and your inheritance has been redistributed among other family members. We hope you will reconsider your choices, but until then, you are financially independent from our family. This decision was not made lightly, but we believe it is necessary to protect our family's reputation and future. The letter was signed by both my parents and notarized. I stared at the document, realizing they had planned this punishment before even giving Sarah a chance. They had already decided to disown me financially before seeing how beautiful our wedding could be, before witnessing how much we loved each other. I walked back into the reception, folded the letter, and put it in my jacket pocket. Sarah was still dancing, her face radiant with happiness despite everything. I made a decision in that moment that would define the rest of my life. I would prove them wrong. I would build something so successful, so undeniably impressive, that they would regret ever doubting us. 6 months after our wedding, Sarah and I were living in a cramped one-bedroom apartment above a pizza shop in downtown Grand Rapids. The constant smell of oregano and melted cheese had become our daily reality. I woke up every morning at 5:30 to catch the construction crew pickup truck that would take me to whatever job site needed an extra pair of hands. My business degree from the University of Michigan felt worthless when I was carrying sheets of drywall up 3 flights of stairs or mixing concrete in 90-degree heat. But every blister on my hands reminded me why I was doing this. Every ache in my back was fuel for my determination. Sarah had it worse in some ways. She'd been a rising star at a prestigious architectural firm in Detroit, but when we moved to Grand Rapids to escape my family's influence, she had to start over. Now she was freelancing, designing small renovations and additions for whoever would hire her. I'd watch her hunched over her drafting table late into the night, calculating square footage and designing beautiful spaces for clients who paid her a fraction of what she was worth. But we were a team. Every evening we'd sit at our tiny kitchen table eating takeout Chinese food and planning our future. I'd show her the business plan I'd been developing, and she'd sketch improvements to make it better. The mid-range hotel market is completely underserved. I explained one night, spreading newspaper clippings across the table. Business travelers don't want to pay $200 a night for luxury hotels, but they also don't want to stay in places with stained carpets and broken air conditioning. Sarah studied my research, her architect's eye catching details I'd missed. What if we focused on efficiency instead of luxury? Make every square foot work harder. Better layouts could give us more revenue per room without increasing construction costs. That's when we found our first opportunity. I was driving home from a demolition job when I saw the "For Sale" sign in front of the old Riverside Motel. The property had been abandoned for 2 years, and it looked like a disaster. Half the windows were boarded up, the parking lot was cracked and overgrown with weeds, and the faded sign hung at an angle that screamed failure. But I saw potential. The location was perfect right off the interstate with easy access for business travelers. The bones of the building were solid, just covered in years of neglect and bad management. I called the number on the sign and learned the property was going to foreclosure auction the following week. The asking price was $80,000, which might as well have been $8 million given our financial situation. That night, Sarah and I created a presentation that would change our lives. She drew architectural plans showing how we could transform the old motel into something special. I wrote a business plan projecting occupancy rates and revenue based on the research I'd been collecting for months. The next morning we walked into First National Bank wearing our best clothes and carrying a folder full of dreams. The loan officer, a middle-aged woman named Carol Peterson, looked skeptical from the moment we sat down. "You want to borrow $80,000 to buy a condemned motel with no collateral and no business experience?" "We have collateral," Sarah said, sliding her architecture portfolio across the desk. "I have 7 years of experience designing commercial spaces. Larry has a business degree and 6 months of hands-on construction experience. We know exactly what we're doing." Carol flipped through Sarah's designs, and I watched her expression change. Sarah had a gift for making spaces feel both functional and beautiful. Her plans showed how we could increase the room count from 24 to 32, while making each room feel larger and more comfortable. "These designs are impressive," Carol admitted, "but you're asking us to bet on a very risky venture." I leaned forward. "The risk is minimal because we're not trying to compete with luxury hotels. We're targeting the gap in the market that everyone else is ignoring. Business travelers who want clean, efficient, affordable accommodations with modern amenities." 3 hours later, we walked out of the bank with a loan approval and a handshake. 2 weeks after that, we were the proud owners of the most run-down motel in Grand Rapids. The renovation was brutal. I worked construction during the day and came home to work on our own project until midnight. Sarah designed every detail from the room, layouts, to the color schemes, to the landscaping. We did most of the work ourselves, learning plumbing and electrical work through YouTube, videos, and trial and error. 4 months later, we reopened as Heritage Suites. The name was Sarah's idea, suggesting both tradition and sophistication. Our first guest was a pharmaceutical sales representative who booked online because of our competitive rates and professional photos. When she checked out, she left a 5-star review that included the words, "Exactly what business travelers need." Bookings started steadily. Word spread through the business traveler networks that there was a new option in Grand Rapids that offered boutique hotel quality at budget prices. Our occupancy rate hit 75% within the first quarter, exceeding our most optimistic projections. We reinvested every dollar back into the business. Better betting upgraded Wi-Fi, a continental breakfast that actually tasted good. Sarah's efficient designs allowed us to offer amenities that our competitors couldn't afford. By the end of our first year, Heritage Suites was consistently booked solid on weeknights. We were making a profit paying down our loan and building a reputation that extended beyond Grand Rapids. That's when I discovered my father had been working against us the entire time. It started with a phone call from a potential investor in Kalamazoo. His name was Dennis Walsh, and he'd heard about our success through mutual business contacts. He wanted to discuss financing our expansion into new markets. We met at a coffee shop, and the conversation started positively. Dennis was impressed with our financial projections and Sarah's architectural innovations. But halfway through our presentation, his tone shifted. "I have to ask you about something," Dennis said, looking uncomfortable. "I spoke with Robert Harrison about your venture. He's well respected in the construction industry, and he had some concerns about your business model." My blood ran cold. Robert Harrison was my father. "What kind of concerns?" Sarah asked, her voice carefully controlled. "He suggested that your initial success might not be sustainable. Said you were cutting corners on safety inspections and using substandard materials. He seemed to think you were in over your heads and heading for bankruptcy." The room felt like it was spinning. My own father had sabotaged a potential investment by spreading lies about our business practices. Every inspection we'd passed with flying colors, every material we'd carefully researched and purchased, every successful month of operation meant nothing compared to his influence in the local business community. Dennis declined to invest, and I knew it wasn't because of our numbers. It was because my father's reputation carried more weight than our proven track record. That night, Sarah found me sitting on our apartment's fire escape, staring out at the city lights. She didn't say anything at first, just sat down beside me and took my hand. "He's not going to stop," I finally said, As long as we stay in Michigan, he'll keep sabotaging us. Then we don't stay in Michigan, Sarah replied. We go somewhere his influence can't reach us. The next morning, we started researching markets in Ohio and Indiana. If my father wanted a war, I was ready to fight. But I wouldn't fight on his terms or on his territory. I would build something so successful that his small-minded interference would become irrelevant. The revelation about my father's sabotage lit a fire in me that burned hotter than my anger. Sarah and I spent the next 3 weeks researching every mid-sized city within a 500-mile radius of Grand Rapids, looking for markets where Robert Harrison's name meant nothing. We identified 3 target cities: Cleveland, Ohio, Indianapolis, Indiana, and Louisville, Kentucky. Each had strong business districts, regular corporate travel, and hotel markets dominated by either expensive chains or rundown independents. Perfect opportunities for heritage suites. Sarah spread maps across our kitchen table, marking potential locations with red pins. Her architect's eye could spot promising properties from satellite images alone. She'd circle areas near business districts, airports, and interstate exchanges, then cross-reference them with local zoning laws and development plans. Cleveland looks perfect, she said, pointing to a cluster of pins near the downtown area. The city's investing heavily in revitalizing the business district, but the hotel options haven't caught up with the demand. I was learning to trust Sarah's instincts completely. Her spatial intelligence and attention to detail had made our Grand Rapids location successful. When she said a location had potential, I listened. We took a road trip to Cleveland on a cold February weekend, driving through neighborhoods and talking to local business owners. At a diner near the airport, we struck up a conversation with a waitress named Betty, who'd worked there for 15 years. Business travelers complain about hotels constantly, Betty told us while refilling our coffee. Either they're paying through the nose for fancy places downtown, or they're staying in dumps that smell like cigarettes and have broken everything. That afternoon, we found our property. It was a former Holiday Inn that had been abandoned for 3 years after a fire damaged the east wing. The bones were solid, and the location was ideal, 10 minutes from downtown Cleveland easy highway access, and surrounded by corporate office parks that were thriving despite the economic uncertainty. The asking price was $120,000 more than we could afford. But Sarah had an idea. What if we find investors who aren't from Michigan, people who've never heard of your father and only care about the numbers? We drove back to Grand Rapids with a plan. Over the next month, we created a presentation that focused entirely on data. Our Grand Rapids location's financial performance market research for Cleveland and detailed architectural plans for the renovation. Our first investor meeting was with a group in Chicago who specialized in small hospitality ventures. The lead investor was a woman named Diana Chen, who'd built a portfolio of successful restaurant and hotel investments across the Midwest. Your Grand Rapids numbers are impressive, Diana said, studying our quarterly reports. 78% occupancy in your first year is remarkable for an independent property. What makes you think you can replicate this success in Cleveland? Sarah presented her market analysis with the confidence of someone who'd done her homework. She'd identified 17 major corporations within a 20-minute drive of our target property, all of which regularly hosted visiting clients and vendors. The nearest comparable hotel was either too expensive or too run down to meet professional standards. The numbers suggest Cleveland has even better potential than Grand Rapids, Sarah explained. Higher corporate density, more business travel, and less competition in our price range. 3 weeks later, Diana's group agreed to finance 50% of the Cleveland project in exchange for a minority ownership stake. For the first time since our wedding day, I felt like we were building something that my father couldn't destroy. The Cleveland renovation took 6 months. We'd learned from our Grand Rapids experience bringing in professional contractors for the complex work while still doing finishing details ourselves. Sarah's designs for the Cleveland location were even more innovative, incorporating natural light and efficient storage solutions that made the rooms feel spacious despite being compact. We also developed our brand identity during this period. Heritage Suites wasn't just about affordable luxury. It was about understanding what business travelers actually needed. Reliable Wi-Fi, comfortable workspaces in every room, 24-hour business centers, and breakfast options for people leaving at 6 in the morning. The Cleveland opening exceeded our wildest expectations. We were 70% booked for our first month based entirely on online reservations and corporate advance bookings. Local business publications wrote articles about the new standard for business travel accommodations. 6 months later, we opened our third location in Indianapolis using a similar investor model. By the end of our second year in business, Heritage Suites had 3 properties generating a combined annual revenue of $2.3 million. Sarah and I moved out of the apartment above the pizza shop and into a small house with an actual office where she could work on architectural projects. For the first time since our wedding, we felt financially secure. But success brought unexpected challenges, including a betrayal that cut deeper than anything my parents had done. I was reviewing the quarterly reports for all 3 properties when I noticed something strange. Our Cleveland location was consistently losing potential bookings to a new competitor called American Business Suites. Their pricing was almost identical to ours, but they were somehow securing corporate contracts that we should have won. I decided to investigate. Posing as a business traveler, I booked a room at one of their properties. What I found shocked me. Their room layouts were nearly identical to Sarah's designs, down to the placement of electrical outlets and the configuration of the work areas. Either this was an incredible coincidence, or someone had given them access to our architectural plans. The truth was worse than I'd imagined. When I researched American Business Suites' ownership structure, I discovered that one of their primary investors was Rose Harrison. My grandmother, the only family member who'd attended our wedding, had secretly funded our direct competitor. I confronted her the following weekend driving to her house in Grosse Pointe for the first time since my wedding day. She was waiting for me on her front porch, as if she'd been expecting this conversation. "Larry, sit down. We need to talk." "Grandma Rose, I know what you did. I know about American Business Suites." She sighed and adjusted her reading glasses. "I suppose you found out eventually. You always were smarter than your father gave you credit for. Why, you were the only one who supported me when I got married. You were the only one who came to the wedding." Rose looked at me with the same expression I'd seen at family dinners for 20 years. Patient, condescending, and ultimately dismissive. "I attended your wedding because appearances matter, Larry. But that doesn't mean I approved of your choices. That woman has been nothing but trouble for our family." The casual racism in her voice hit me like a slap. All this time, I'd believed that at least one person in my family had accepted Sarah and supported our marriage. The reality was that Rose had been playing a longer game, positioning herself to profit from our business model while undermining our success. "American Business Suites has been using our expansion plans because I told them where you were looking," Rose continued. "They've been underbidding you on properties because I kept them informed about your financial capabilities. I've been protecting our family's interests." I stood up to leave, but Rose grabbed my arm. "Before you storm off in righteous anger, consider this: your little hotel business is about to face some serious challenges. Jake's been making some poor decisions that could affect the whole family. You might want to think about rejoining us before it's too late." I pulled my arm away and walked back to my car without another word. The betrayal stung more than my parents' absence from our wedding, because I'd actually believed Rose cared about our happiness. But driving home, I realized something important. Rose's sabotage had actually made us stronger. By forcing us to compete against better-funded competitors, she'd pushed us to become more innovative, more efficient, and more focused on customer satisfaction. We weren't just surviving, we were thriving despite her interference. That night, Sarah and I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of trying to outcompete our copycat rivals, we would completely reinvent what Heritage Suites could be. We would stop playing their game and start playing our own. The morning after my confrontation with Rose, I woke up feeling something I hadn't experienced in months' clarity. Sarah was already at her drafting table sketching ideas for what she called Heritage Suites 2.0. "If they want to copy our old designs," she said without looking up, "let them. We'll create something they can't replicate." Over the next 6 weeks, Sarah developed the most revolutionary hotel concept I'd ever seen. Instead of renovating existing buildings, we would construct modular hotels from prefabricated components. Each room would be built in a factory, transported to the site, and assembled like giant building blocks. The advantages were staggering. Construction time dropped from 6 months to 6 weeks. Costs decreased by 30% because of factory efficiency and bulk purchasing. Quality control improved dramatically because every room was built in a controlled environment. Most importantly, the system was scalable in ways that traditional hotel development never could be. "Look at this," Sarah said, showing me her latest drawings. Each module contains a complete guest room with bathroom workspace and climate control. They connect through standardized interfaces so we can configure them for different site requirements. 20 rooms, 50 rooms, 100 rooms, all using the same basic components. But the real innovation was in the guest experience. Sarah had designed smart room technology that integrated with mobile apps, allowing guests to control everything from lighting to temperature to entertainment before they even arrived. Check-in and check-out could happen entirely through their phones, eliminating wait times and reducing staffing costs. "Business travelers don't want luxury," Sarah explained. "They want efficiency, reliability, and convenience. This gives them exactly that." We found a manufacturing partner in Ohio who specialized in modular construction for schools and hospitals. Their quality standards were higher than anything used in traditional hotel construction, and their production capacity could support rapid expansion. Our first modular Heritage Suite opened in Indianapolis 6 months later. The construction process attracted local media attention because it looked like nothing anyone had seen before. Trucks arrived with fully formed room modules that were lifted into place by cranes and connected with precision engineering. The guest response was immediate and overwhelming. Business travelers loved the seamless technology integration and the consistent quality across every room. Corporate travel coordinators appreciated the simplified booking and billing systems. Within 3 months, our Indianapolis modular location was operating at 92% occupancy. But the real breakthrough came when we started franchising the modular concept. Entrepreneurs across the country wanted to open Heritage Suites in their markets, but traditional hotel development required millions in upfront investment and months of uncertain construction. Our modular system changed everything. Franchise partners could open a Heritage Suite for half the traditional investment in a quarter of the time. We provided the modules the technology systems and the operational training. They provided the land, the local permits, and the management. Franchise applications poured in from cities we'd never considered: Phoenix, Denver, Nashville, Richmond. Each location used the same modular components, but could be configured for local market conditions. Sarah's flexible design system allowed for different property sizes and layouts while maintaining brand consistency. Within 18 months of opening our first modular location, Heritage Suites had 23 properties in development across 12 states. Our revenue had grown from $2.3 million to $8.7 million annually, and we were adding new locations faster than any hotel brand in our market segment. Sarah and I bought our first house during this period, a beautiful craftsman home in Ann Arbor, with enough space for the family we were planning. We celebrated our second wedding anniversary with financial security and a growing business that we'd built from nothing. The best news came on a warm spring evening when Sarah told me she was pregnant. We were sitting on our new front porch watching neighbors walk their dogs and kids ride bicycles, finally living the life we'd dreamed about on our honeymoon. Heritage Suites. Junior will be born into a very different world than we started with. Sarah said, holding my hand and smiling. But success brought scrutiny, and scrutiny revealed the depth of my family's sabotage efforts. It started with a routine inspection at our Cleveland property. The city building inspector, a man named Frank Morrison, seemed nervous throughout the process. He questioned every aspect of our construction and requested documentation that went far beyond standard requirements. "Just being thorough," he kept saying, but his behavior felt suspicious. 3 weeks later, we received a notice that our Cleveland property would be subject to additional inspections and potential fines for irregularities in permit compliance. The accusations were vague, but serious enough to delay our planned expansion into Columbus. I hired a private investigator named Patricia Walsh to look into the situation. What she discovered made my stomach turn. Frank Morrison had been receiving monthly payments from Robert Harrison for over a year. The payments weren't large enough to attract attention from city oversight, but they were regular and consistent. In exchange, Morrison had been delaying permits, requesting unnecessary re-inspections, and creating bureaucratic obstacles for Heritage Suites projects. But the corruption went deeper than individual inspectors. Patricia's investigation revealed that Robert had been coordinating with Rose's American Business Suites investment group, sharing our business plans and expansion strategies. They knew which cities we were targeting, which properties we were considering, and what our financial limitations were. "Your father has been running a systematic campaign to undermine your business for over 2 years," Patricia told me. "He's been bribing inspectors, feeding information to competitors, and spreading rumors about your financial stability to potential partners." The evidence was overwhelming: bank records, recorded phone conversations, and email exchanges between Robert and various business contacts. My family hadn't just rejected me personally, they had actively worked to destroy the life Sarah and I were building together. The corruption scandal actually helped our business in unexpected ways. When the story broke in local media, Heritage Suites was portrayed as the victim of unfair business practices. Our brand became associated with integrity and perseverance rather than just affordable luxury. More importantly, the legal resolution cleared all the delayed permits simultaneously, allowing us to accelerate our expansion timeline. Projects that had been stalled for months suddenly moved forward with official approval. But the personal cost was devastating. Learning that my entire family, including Rose, had conspired against our success destroyed any remaining hope for reconciliation. These weren't just people who disapproved of my marriage. They were actively sabotaging my livelihood and threatening my ability to provide for Sarah and our coming child. The night after Patricia showed me the evidence, I sat in our nursery, assembling a crib for the baby, who would be born in 4 months. Sarah found me there at 2 a.m. staring at the instruction manual without really seeing it. "They're not going to change," I said. "Even if we become successful beyond their wildest imagination, they'll never accept us." Sarah sat down beside me on the floor. "Then we stop trying to earn their acceptance. We focus on building something so successful that their opinion becomes irrelevant." She was right. The corruption scandal had taught us that we couldn't build our future while looking backward. Heritage Suites would succeed not because my family supported us, but in spite of their interference. Over the next 6 months, we implemented the most aggressive expansion strategy in our company's history. New franchise locations opened monthly. Our modular construction system proved so efficient that we consistently delivered projects ahead of schedule and under budget. By the time our daughter Emma was born, Heritage Suites operated 38 properties across 15 states, with an annual revenue approaching $25 million. Emma's birth announcement included a photo of her tiny hand holding a Heritage Suites room key, symbolizing the legacy we were building for her future. But we had no idea how dramatically our success was about to accelerate, or how my family's financial desperation would finally force a reckoning that none of us could avoid. Emma's first months were a whirlwind of sleepless nights and business expansion. Sarah had taken 3 months off from active design work, but she couldn't resist reviewing franchise applications and suggesting improvements to our modular designs from her rocking chair during late-night feedings. Phoenix wants to add 50 rooms to their initial configuration, she told me one morning, bouncing Emma on her lap while studying architectural plans. The tourist season overlap with business travel could make them our highest-grossing location. I was learning to balance fatherhood with running a rapidly growing company. Most mornings I'd feed Emma while reviewing revenue reports from our 38 locations. The numbers were consistently exceeding projections, but the real breakthrough was still ahead of us. The turning point came when Patricia Walsh, my private investigator, called with urgent news about my brother Jake's situation. "You need to see this," she said, arriving at our house with a manila envelope thick enough to be a novel. "Your family's financial problems are worse than anyone realizes." Inside were bank statements, credit reports, and gambling records that painted a devastating picture. Jake had accumulated over $300,000 in gambling debts over the past 2 years. He'd been borrowing against Robert's construction company to cover his losses, but the gambling had spiraled completely out of control. More shocking was the evidence that Jake owed money to people who didn't accept excuses or payment plans. Patricia had photographs of threatening letters and documentation of phone calls from debt collectors who weren't using legal channels. "Your brother's in real danger," Patricia explained. "These creditors have been known to use physical intimidation when people don't pay. They're threatening his wife and kids if he doesn't settle his debts within 60 days. But the most revealing discovery was a series of text messages between Jake and my father discussing their Larry problem. The messages made it clear that Robert's sabotage of my business wasn't just about disapproving of my marriage. They had been hoping to force me to fail financially, so I'd have to come back to the family for help, giving them leverage to control my life. "We need Larry to need us," one message from Robert read. "Once his hotel thing fails, he'll have to choose between his wife and his family's financial support." The strategy had backfired spectacularly. Instead of failing, Heritage Suites was thriving beyond anyone's expectations. Meanwhile, their own financial situation had deteriorated to the point of crisis. That same week, we received news that would change everything. Forbes magazine wanted to feature Heritage Suites in their annual Companies to Watch issue. The journalist Maria Santos had been tracking our growth for 6 months and was impressed by our innovative approach to hospitality. "You've created something unique in the industry," Maria told me during our interview. "Modular construction combined with technology integration at scale. No one else is doing this successfully." The Forbes article led to a cascade of media attention. CNN invited me for a business segment about innovative small companies. Entrepreneur magazine wanted to feature our story as an example of building success from setbacks. Harvard Business School requested case study materials about our modular franchise model. But the real validation came from industry recognition. The American Hotel and Lodging Association invited me to present our modular concept at their national conference in Las Vegas. Standing on that stage explaining our innovation to hotel executives from around the world, I felt like I'd finally proven my worth in terms that even my family couldn't dismiss. The conference presentation led to our biggest breakthrough yet. A private equity firm specializing in hospitality acquisitions approached us about rapid national expansion. Their proposal was simple. They would provide the capital for us to open Heritage Suites locations in 50 major markets within 18 months. "Your modular system makes rapid scaling possible in ways that traditional hotel development never could," explained Marcus Thompson, the lead partner. "We want to help you become a national brand before competitors copy your innovations." After months of negotiations, we agreed to a partnership that valued Heritage Suites at $45 million. The deal provided enough capital to establish locations in every major business travel market in the United States, while maintaining Sarah's and my control over design and operations. Sarah's second pregnancy announcement came just as we were signing the expansion deal. Emma was learning to walk babbling constantly and showing signs of inherited curiosity about how things worked. The idea of giving her a sibling while building a national business empire felt like the perfect completion of our family dream. Heritage Suites will be Emma's legacy. Sarah said, watching our daughter play with blocks that she insisted on stacking in perfect architectural symmetries. By the time she's old enough to understand business, we'll have built something truly special. The rapid expansion exceeded our most optimistic projections. Our modular system allowed us to open new locations every 2 weeks. Each opening generated local media coverage, corporate partnerships, and immediate bookings from business travelers who had heard about Heritage Suites through word-of-mouth recommendations. By Emma's first birthday, we operated 87 locations across 26 states. Annual revenue had reached $58 million, and our occupancy rates consistently exceeded industry averages by 15 to 20 percentage points. The success attracted attention from major hotel chains who wanted to acquire Heritage Suites or license our modular technology. We declined all offers determined to maintain control over our vision and growth strategy. But success also brought scrutiny that would reveal the full extent of my family's financial desperation and set up the confrontation that neither of us could avoid much longer. The breakthrough moment came during a live television interview with CNBC about innovative business models in hospitality. The interviewer, Jennifer Walsh, had done thorough research about Heritage Suites' origins and my family background. "You've built this success despite some significant personal challenges," she said. "Your family didn't support your marriage or your early business ventures. How does it feel to prove them wrong?" I'd prepared for this question, but answering it on national television felt cathartic in ways I hadn't expected. Building Heritage Suites taught me that real family isn't about blood relationships or inherited money, I replied. It's about the people who support your dreams and help you become the person you're meant to be. Sarah and Emma are my real family. The interview aired during prime business hours, reaching millions of viewers. Within hours, our website crashed from the volume of franchise inquiries. Corporate travel coordinators began calling to establish preferred partnerships. Hotel industry analysts published reports upgrading Heritage Suites' projected valuation. Most significantly, the publicity triggered a comprehensive business valuation that shocked everyone, including me. When the investment banking firm completed their analysis 3 weeks later, Heritage Suites was worth $112 million. The number felt surreal. Sarah and I had gone from living above a pizza shop to building a business worth over $100 million in less than 4 years. Emma would grow up financially secure in ways that most people could never imagine. But the real test was still coming. The media attention that had made our success so visible to the world had also made it impossible for my family to ignore. The same week that our valuation hit the news, I received the text message that would force a final confrontation with the people who had tried so hard to destroy what we'd built. The morning of the CNBC interview, Sarah was experiencing morning sickness from her second pregnancy, while trying to manage Emma, who was going through a phase of refusing to wear clothes. I was adjusting my tie and reviewing talking points when chaos erupted in our kitchen. "Daddy, tie," Emma announced, pulling off her pajama shirt and throwing it across the room with the determination of someone who knew exactly what she wanted. "Emma, sweetie, clothes are not optional," Sarah said, looking pale, but trying to maintain parental authority. I picked up our naked toddler and spun her around until she giggled. "How about we make a deal? You wear clothes and Daddy will teach you to tie shoes later." "Deal!" Emma shouted, clapping her hands. Moments like these reminded me why building Heritage Suites mattered. Emma would grow up in a world where her parents had created something meaningful, where financial security allowed us to focus on what really mattered: family love, and building a legacy worth passing on. The CNBC interview went better than I'd hoped. Jennifer Walsh's questions were challenging but fair, and I felt confident discussing our modular innovations and expansion strategy. When she asked about my family's lack of support, I answered honestly, but without bitterness. "Sometimes the people who are supposed to support you can't see your vision," I said. "That's when you have to trust yourself and the people who do believe in you." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Our website received over 12,000 franchise inquiries within 24 hours. Corporate travel coordinators from Fortune 500 companies called to establish partnerships. Hotel industry publications requested exclusive interviews about our disruptive approach to hospitality. But the real breakthrough came 3 weeks later when Goldman Sachs completed an unsolicited business valuation for their hospitality industry report. Their analysis concluded that Heritage Suites' innovative model and rapid growth trajectory justified a current valuation of $150 million. $150 million. I stared at the number in the official report, trying to process what it meant. Sarah and I had built a business worth more than my father's construction company, Rose's Investments, and my family's combined net worth. The people who had dismissed us as naive dreamers making a terrible mistake had been surpassed by the very thing they'd tried to destroy. The valuation triggered a media frenzy. Forbes moved us to their main cover story. CNN scheduled a prime-time special about millennial entrepreneurs disrupting traditional industries. Harvard Business School invited me to guest lecture about innovative business models. The attention culminated with an invitation to the White House Small Business Summit, where I would represent innovative hospitality companies in a panel discussion about economic growth and job creation. Standing in the East Room shaking hands with senators and cabinet members, I thought about how impossible this moment would have seemed 4 years earlier when my family was cutting me out of their wills. But success brought unexpected pressures. Our rapid growth had attracted attention from major hotel chains who viewed Heritage Suites as either a potential acquisition target or a competitive threat. Marriott sent representatives to discuss partnership opportunities. Hilton executives hinted at licensing deals for our modular technology. We declined all offers determined to maintain control over our vision. Heritage Suites would grow on our terms, according to our values, creating the kind of company culture that reflected Sarah's and my beliefs about treating employees and customers with genuine respect. The morning the Forbes cover story hit newsstands, featuring Sarah, Emma, and me standing in front of our newest location in Denver. My phone buzzed with a text message that made my stomach drop. "Family dinner at 7 tonight. Important discussion." The sender was listed as Dad in my contacts, though I hadn't spoken to Robert Harrison in over 3 years. The timing wasn't coincidental. The same day that Heritage Suites achieved national recognition for reaching $150 million in value, my father suddenly wanted to have an important discussion. I showed the message to Sarah, who was feeding Emma breakfast while reviewing architectural plans for our West Coast expansion. "He's seen the Forbes article," she said without looking up. "The question is whether you want to find out what he wants." I spent the day researching my family's current financial situation using the same investigative resources that had revealed their sabotage efforts. What I discovered explained everything about the timing of Robert's text message. Harrison Construction was facing bankruptcy within 60 days. Jake's gambling debts had forced them to liquidate most of their equipment and lay off 80% of their workforce. Robert had been borrowing against the company's remaining assets to cover operating expenses, but creditors were no longer willing to extend payment deadlines. Amanda's medical school loans were in default, threatening her ability to complete her residency program. Rose's investment portfolio had suffered major losses when American Business Suites failed to compete effectively against our improved modular designs. My entire family was drowning in debt, while the son they'd disowned was featured on magazine covers as a business success story. The irony was almost poetic, except that these were real people facing real consequences for choices they'd made over years. Patricia Walsh provided the final piece of the puzzle-recorded phone conversations between family members discussing their Larry strategy. The conversations revealed that they'd spent months planning how to approach me for financial assistance, debating whether to apologize for their treatment of Sarah or to focus on family obligations. "They're going to try emotional manipulation first," Patricia warned me. "Appeals to family loyalty, shared history, your responsibility to help relatives in crisis. If that doesn't work, they might resort to threats or ultimatums." That evening, I put on the same suit I'd worn for the CNBC interview and drove to my childhood home for the first time since my wedding day. The house looked smaller than I remembered, with peeling paint and a front yard that hadn't been properly maintained. Even their landscaping reflected their declining financial situation. My entire family was waiting in the dining room, where we'd shared countless holiday meals before everything fell apart. Robert sat at the head of the table, trying to project authority, despite the obvious stress lines around his eyes. Patricia looked nervous, fidgeting with her jewelry. Amanda and Jake avoided eye contact, clearly uncomfortable with whatever plan they'd rehearsed. Rose sat in her usual chair, wearing the same patient expression I remembered from my childhood. Of everyone present, she seemed the most confident about the conversation we were about to have. But I wasn't the same person who had left this house 3 years earlier, angry and heartbroken, and financially dependent. I was the CEO of a $150 million company, the husband of a brilliant architect, and the father of a daughter who would never doubt that her parents loved and supported her dreams. The family dinner was about to begin, but this time I would control the conversation. I walked into the dining room where my family sat around the same oak table where we'd celebrated my high school graduation, my college acceptance, and countless birthdays before everything changed. The room felt smaller and shabbier than I remembered, with faded wallpaper and chairs that needed reupholstering. Robert cleared his throat and attempted a smile that looked more like a grimace. "Larry, thank you for coming. I know it's been too long since we've all been together." 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days, I replied, taking the empty seat across from him. "Not that I've been counting." Patricia jumped in quickly, as if she'd rehearsed this part. "We've been following your success in the news. The Forbes article was wonderful. We're so proud of what you've accomplished." The word proud hung in the air like a bad smell. These people had actively sabotaged my business, spread lies about my financial stability, and bribed government inspectors to delay my projects. Now they were claiming pride in the success they'd tried to prevent. Amanda shifted uncomfortably. "Larry, we know there have been misunderstandings between us. Family relationships are complicated, and maybe we all made mistakes." Misunderstandings. I pulled out my phone and set it on the table. "Would you like me to play the recorded conversations where you discuss strategies for destroying my marriage, or should we start with the bank records showing payments to corrupt inspectors?" The color drained from Robert's face. Jake actually flinched. Only Rose maintained her composure, watching me with the calculating expression I'd seen her use during business negotiations. "I hired investigators," I continued. "Professional, thorough people who document facts rather than spreading family gossip. I know about Jake's gambling debts, Amanda's defaulted loans, and the impending bankruptcy of Harrison Construction. I know about Rose's failed investment in American Business Suites and the coordinated effort to steal my business plans." Patricia started crying, but they felt like performance tears rather than genuine emotion. "Larry, we're family. Whatever mistakes were made, we should be able to work through them together." "Family," I repeated. "Let me tell you what I've learned about family over the past 3 years." I stood up and walked to the window overlooking the backyard where I'd played as a child. The swing set was still there, rusted and overgrown with weeds. Family means Sarah staying up all night helping me prepare investor presentations when she was exhausted from her own work. Family means our friends from Heritage Suites sending flowers when Emma was born, even though they'd only known us for 2 years. Family means Sarah's parents flying to Michigan to babysit Emma so I could attend business conferences. I turned back to face them. Family does not mean skipping someone's wedding because you disapprove of their spouse's race. Family does not mean bribing government officials to sabotage someone's livelihood. Family does not mean spreading lies about someone's business to prevent their success. Rose finally spoke, her voice steady and cold. You've made your point, Larry. We understand you're angry, but anger doesn't solve the practical problems we're facing. Jake's creditors aren't interested in family drama. They want their money, and they're threatening violence if they don't get it. Here's my practical solution, I said, sitting back down. Heritage Suites will purchase the remaining assets of Harrison Construction for $200,000. That's enough to pay Jake's debts and prevent bankruptcy. Robert and Jake can continue working as employees under new management with salaries based on performance rather than ownership. Robert looked stunned. You want to buy my company? I want to prevent my nephew and niece from having their father murdered by loan sharks. The business acquisition is just the mechanism. I pulled a folder from my briefcase and set it on the table. The purchase contract includes several non-negotiable conditions. First, Jake enters a residential treatment program for gambling addiction. Second, Amanda gets help with her medical school loans through Heritage Suites' Employee Education Assistance Program. Third, you all issue public apologies for your treatment of Sarah and for your attempts to sabotage our business. Patricia wiped her eyes. Public apologies? Full-page ads in the Grand Rapids Press and Detroit Free Press acknowledging that you were wrong about Sarah and expressing regret for your behavior. You'll also record video statements that will be posted on Heritage Suites' website. Jake finally spoke up. What if we refuse? I shrugged. Then you handle your creditor problems yourself. I'll go home to my wife and daughter, and you'll never see or hear from me again. Emma will grow up knowing she has grandparents and relatives, but that they chose money and prejudice over family relationships. The room fell silent. I could see them calculating, weighing their pride against their financial desperation. Rose broke the silence. What about ongoing relationships? If we agree to your terms, what kind of contact will you allow with Emma? That depends entirely on your behavior going forward. Emma will know her grandparents, but only if you treat Sarah with the respect she deserves. The first racist comment, the first condescending attitude, the first attempt to undermine our marriage will end all contact permanently. I stood up to leave. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, the offer expires and I focus my attention on people who actually deserve it. Amanda called after me as I reached the door. Larry, wait. I'm sorry. I'm genuinely sorry for everything. I was scared of disappointing Dad, and I let that fear make me cruel. Sarah didn't deserve any of what we did to her. I looked at my sister, seeing genuine remorse for the first time. Apologies are a start, Amanda. But trust has to be earned through actions, not just words. 46 hours later, I received a signed copy of the purchase agreement, along with draft apology statements for my review. The apologies weren't perfect, but they acknowledged wrongdoing and expressed genuine regret for their treatment of Sarah. 6 months later, Heritage Suites reached a valuation of $200 million. Our modular expansion had succeeded beyond our wildest projections, with locations in 43 states and international franchise inquiries from Canada and the United Kingdom. Emma's first birthday party was a revelation. Both families attended, and for the first time, I watched Sarah's parents, and my parents actually have conversations. Robert played with Emma, while Sarah explained her latest architectural innovations to Patricia. Jake, 6 months into treatment and working as a project manager for our construction division, helped Amanda study for her medical board exams. The transformation wasn't complete or perfect. Old prejudices and family dynamics don't disappear overnight. But everyone was making genuine effort, and Emma was growing up surrounded by people who had learned to choose love over hate. Standing on our back deck that evening, watching Emma toddle between her grandparents while Sarah rested her hand on her growing belly, I realized we'd accomplished something more valuable than building a successful business. We'd proven that you can choose your values over your circumstances, that you can create the family you need, even when the family you're born into disappoints you. Heritage Suites succeeded because Sarah and I refused to let other people's limitations define our possibilities. Our children would grow up knowing that love, respect, and hard work matter more than inherited wealth or social expectations. The most important lesson was simple, real success means building something that reflects your values and creates value for others. Money recognition and family reconciliation were all consequences of staying true to what we believed was right. Sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who teach you the most about who you want to become. My family's rejection forced me to discover my own strength and Sarah's incredible partnership. Their sabotage made our success more meaningful because we'd earned every dollar and every achievement despite their interference. Building Heritage Suites taught me that the best revenge against people who doubt you isn't anger or retaliation. The best revenge is living so well with such integrity and purpose that their negativity becomes irrelevant to your happiness. What would you do if your family tried to sabotage your dreams? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own values? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know if you've faced similar challenges in building something meaningful despite opposition. Thank you for listening to our story. I hope it reminds you that success built on love and partnership will always be stronger than success built on fear and control. Remember to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories about overcoming family challenges and building business success, and share this with anyone who needs encouragement to pursue their dreams despite family doubt. Here's to choosing the family that chooses you and building the life that reflects your values rather than your circumstances.